Member for Surrey Cloverdale.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker, and thank you to the member opposite for his comments. My story. Several years ago, I had the misfortune of losing a number of family members over a very short time frame. My mother's second husband, my father-in-law, my close uncle, my father, and my brother all left this earth too soon and unexpectedly. I remember the day that my battalion chief called me and asked me when I was coming into work. I'd lost track of the days. I began to drive to Surrey from Campbell River and explained I'd be in as soon as I could, but it wasn't going to happen that day. And during that same time frame, there had been a number of traumatic incidents I had been exposed to, which added to the stressors that I was exposed to. I found myself on the side of the highway on the way back to the ferry, just wondering what happened to me. Missing a day of work never happened before, and now I was experiencing shortness of breath and chest pains. I made it home and I wondered how I got there. I couldn't recall my route home. I wondered if all the lights I drove through were green. I wondered if I was going to be able to report to duty. Honourable Speaker, I couldn't. My mental health and physical health wouldn't let me. I could go on forever about my signs and symptoms, but the real issue my doctor was treating for was an anxiety disorder. Months later, with the toolbox filled with coping skills, I returned to work with a different perspective of life, and specifically my life. Years later, I would add another tool to my toolkit, and that was through a mindful coach. Kevin gave me the gift of mindfulness, which I use to complement my well-being each and every day, and I do that today as well. I didn't think I'd ever have to use all of these new skills in my career outside of the fire service, but I did. In 2014, I remember reading the emails, the texts, receiving phone calls when a former colleague of my fire department went missing, and a short time later, they found him deceased. A few months later, similar circumstances with another colleague who took his life early as well. Both Kevin and Ernie left behind young families. I remember how we all scrambled to find a root cause, and I remember how the shortness of breath and chest pains came back. And I remember how difficult it was to be at those celebrations of life. I could not get out of my mind how difficult it had to have been for both of them to decide to end their lives early. But what I remember the most was the ramping up of mental health resources for those in my fire department. I remember the biggest hurdle for most of us was the stigma that came from admitting somebody had a mental health issue. 72 years later, we now understand more of the issues that surround the mental health challenges. There's more work to be done to break down the barriers of stigma and to provide timely help to those in need. And as the member opposite said, remember, it's okay not to be okay. Just let somebody know what you're experiencing. Let's share our stories and support one another so that more people can get the help that they need and deserve. This is just the beginning. We still have a lot of work in front of us. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, member.